Okay, welcome. This is going to be a lesson on the 8 characteristics of living things. We start with the idea of biology right off the bat. Biology is the study of living things. Bio, if we break it down, bio means life, and ology means to study something, or the study of something. So how do you know when something truly is living?
So we have 8 characteristics that biologists have identified that define something as living, and this is learning target 2 in the nature of life unit. I can list, explain, and apply the 8 characteristics of life according to biologists. So we're going to go through the list, we're going to explain them a little bit, and then you guys will be asked in class to apply them. This is the note sheet that you should have in your notebook. We're going to give you an example of how to fill it out, but these are the 2 basic things that you need to have in there. In each circle, you want to finish the prompt, all living things, and then next to each circle, you'll be adding terms or explanations as we go through each of the 8 characteristics of life.
Pretty simple, isn't it?
I think so.
Pretty simple. All right, here we go. So the first of the characteristics of living things, all living things are made up of cells. So that'll be your first circle that we're working on. Cells are the basic unit of life. It's the smallest thing that could actually be considered living. So that's why we start there. If they don't have cells, then they cannot be considered living. Now, when we classify things in life, there usually is two types of made up of cells characteristic. One is called unicellular. The unicellular is the classification we give to a living thing that is just made up of one single cell. And we have the majority of life that is actually single-celled. And then we have what we are very familiar with is multi-celled organisms, which are living things made up of many cells, usually diversified and specialized. So that was living things are made up of cells.
Yep. So let's say you were filling out your note sheet as Mr. Ruska was speaking there. It would look something like this. You would have finished the prompt, all living things are made of cells, and then you would have included some information up here about unicellular, multicellular, and that the smallest thing that is living is a cell. That would be a complete note sheet. So let's talk about the second characteristic of living things, reproduction. So all living things reproduce. All living things, the act of reproduction falls into sort of 2 categories. Reproduction can occur sexually, which is probably the type of reproduction you guys are most familiar with. This involves 2 parents. Usually it's called a sperm and an egg. It certainly is in humans. Other kinds of living things do not always call them sperm and eggs, but lots of things reproduce sexually, including these trees right here. So here we have some offspring of some trees. The second kind of reproduction, less familiar to you, probably because it mostly occurs in some of those unicellular organisms Mr. Ruska was just speaking of, is asexual reproduction, and this is reproduction where there's only one parent. There's no sperm and no egg.
So now, as you have filled in your note sheet up to this point, you have 2 circles filled in with some notes. The third circle you'll be filling in is all living things grow and develop. We all understand what grow means. Grow is going to be changing in physical size, although growth does not need to be continuous, but does occur at some point in the life of all living things, even in unicellular organisms. The hard part to see might be, maybe the easier part to see for some things is the development piece. The develop means to mature over time, and you see the picture there. We see the growth, and then as the plant gets to full size, there still is going to be a development piece that, as you see the plant change into its mature form, even though it does no longer gets taller or larger, it does change in its physical attributes.
And even though Mr. Ruska and I are done, for the most part, growing, we're still developing.
I'm always developing, yeah. Absolutely. So now you have 3 circles filled in on your note sheet.
All right. Fourth one, all living things have a genetic code, and the genetic code consists of DNA and RNA. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about this, especially in the second trimester. But a genetic code is essentially this. It's information. It's stored in a biological way, but it's just information. It's stored in each cell, and it directs how that cell operates. It directs cell processes, and it creates not only the traits of the cell as a result, but then all of the traits that living things possess. So this is, everything has to have some kind of genetic code, some kind of information.
And it can be in the form of DNA or in the form of RNA, but it's got to be, it has to have something that gives them their genes.
Yep.
Another one is all living things use and need energy. This is the one where we go, well, everything's got to eat. That's fairly true. Energy comes from food, and so we do need that. We need to get it, and we need to use it as food as energy. Most of the energy, well, let's see here. Whoop! We'll move that picture up, that little bear fishing for salmon on the falls there. The energy that comes from food usually falls in two categories. Those that produce their own food via the sunlight, we call those producers, and those that actually get their food by eating something else, which we end up calling consumers. And we'll spend the majority part of this trimester on this idea of using and needing energy.
Okay, now we're at responding to the environment. So all living things need to have the ability to respond in some way to the environment. Another way of saying this is reacting to stimuli. If you look in this picture right here, you see some fish. They all seem to be directing away from the diver there and his light. So those fish are reacting. And all living things, even unicellular things, can respond to stimuli in the environment. This is going to be any sort of signal that causes a response. And there's a whole variety of things that would fit into this category, everything from, sunlight to the presence of a predator like you see there.
I poke you and you're going to move. That's right. All right, here we go. The next one, maintaining homeostasis. Homeostasis of all the 8 living characteristics kind of brings everything together. And this idea of homeostasis, which by definition says it's a process where cells and living things maintain a stable internal environment. The processes by which that happens is homeostasis. And so this idea of maintaining an internal environment is a big thing to all living things. Some examples that we use to demonstrate homeostasis would be panting or sweating to cool the body, where body has a specific temperature it wants to operate at and relies upon that temperature to be at. Urinating to remove excess waste produced by the cells of the body. Your body producing blood faster after a large loss of blood. So all these ways of making sure our internal environments remain stable and can operate the way they were supposed to.
Okay, so I think, is this our last one maybe?
This is our last one.
This is the 8. Yeah. All right, so the 8th characteristic that living things possess, and we won't be really spending a lot of time in class on this until 3rd trimester. You've kind of gotten the whole year in one big overview here, but is evolution. So all living things need to evolve, and evolution is a process of changing over a long period of time. This is different from growth and development. You don't evolve as an individual. The whole population evolves. It has to be all of the members of a group of living things. So here we have just a picture that shows a recreation of some of the other kinds of living things that have brought us up to the modern horse. So all horses, all the way at the far right there, along with several species of horses that are no longer present on our planet, but from which the modern horse evolved. So they changed over time as a population. That's the 8 characteristics. Anything else?
Yep, you should have a full note sheet by now and notes to go along with it.
Yeah.
All right.
Wonderful.
The end.